I've been lying down for hours now. It's 5:35 a.m. and there's not much I can do. You know what the worst part about my situation is? I'm in the same room as my parents. They keep looking at me, and I can't help but look back and try not to cry or scream. Their eyes are focused on me, and their mouths are wide open. There's a strong scent of blood, and I feel paralyzed with fear. Here's the thing. The second I make any hint that I'm not asleep anymore, I'm completely fucked. I will die, and there's nobody around to save me. I've been trying to think of a way out, but the only idea I have is to rush to the front door and scream for help, perhaps hoping any neighbors hear me. It's risky, but if I stay here, I'll surely die. He's waiting for me to wake up and see his masterpiece. You're probably wondering what's going on. Well, I do tend to get ahead of myself sometimes. About 3 hours ago, I heard screaming from the other side of the house. I got up and went to check on the noise before realizing that I had to use the restroom. Instead of doing the smart thing and investigating, I used the bathroom first. I could have gotten myself killed right then for my stupid actions. I did my business and took a peek outside the bathroom. There was blood on the carpet. I got very worried and ran back to my room, hiding under the sheets like the pussy I was. I tried to convince myself to go back to sleep, that it was just some really vivid dream or something. But I heard my bedroom door open. And like the terrified child I was, I peeked out from under my blankets to see what was going on. I could see something dragging my dead parents into the room. It was not human, I can tell you that. It was hairless, with no eyes or clothing. It walked like a caveman, with its back slouched as it dragged my parents. But this thing was much smarter than any caveman. It was aware of what it was doing. It propped my dad up on the edge of my bed and made him face me. It then set my mother down in the chair and positioned her towards me as well. It then started rubbing its hands on the walls, staining them with blood, and then drew a circle with the devil's pentagram in it. This thing had made what it would probably call a masterpiece. And to finish it off, it scribbled a message into the wall that I could not read in the darkness. It then positions itself under my bed, waiting to strike. The scariest thing now is my eyes have adjusted to the darkness since then, and I can read the message on the wall. I don't want to look at it. It's terrifying to think about. But I feel I need to see before I'm killed. I peek at the creature's masterpiece, and it says, "I know you're awake." I work at a gas station in rural Pennsylvania. It's a boring job, but it's pretty easy and it pays alright. A few weeks ago, this new guy started. I'll call him Jeremy. Jeremy is weird. He's about 25 or 26, and he hardly speaks. But he's got the creepiest laugh I've ever heard. My boss and I have both noticed this, but it's never been a problem. So there's not much we can do about it. Customers have never complained about him, and he's always done his job fairly well. Up until a few weeks ago, anyway. That's when things started going missing. Employee theft can be a problem at any business that sells consumer goods, and there's only one person working at a time at this gas station. It's a pretty small place. About 2 weeks ago, my boss started noticing that we were short on motor oil. At first, it was a few containers at a time. Then entire shelves and boxes from the back room. Pretty soon, entire shipments would be gone the day after we got them. And it would always be right after Jeremy's shifts. My boss has checked the security camera tapes from every single night he worked, but he could never catch him in the act. Jeremy would lock up at closing, and then the motor oil would be gone the next day. My boss usually takes the tape home with him to try and catch Jeremy stealing, but his daughter had a softball game last night, so he asked me to watch the tape for him. He offered to pay me overtime under the table, so obviously I took that offer. There are 3 cameras, so he gave me 3 different tapes to check. I figured it would be a long night, but I'm trying to save up for vacation, so I really needed the money. I took the tapes home, popped them in an old VCR, and sat back. Two days ago, the last time he worked, Jeremy started at 4 p.m. Everything seemed pretty normal at first. He counted up his drawer, switched off with the girl who was working before him, and waited for a customer. The first person who came in was Mrs. Templeton. The time stamped on the video read 4:03. She's a regular. She picked up her cigarettes and a newspaper and paid with a 20. Nothing unusual there. The next customer was some local guy named Ron. He drives a motorcycle. Usually comes in every few days. He filled up his tank, got a bag of beef jerky, paid with his credit card, and then left. Next was some guy with a cowboy hat. I've never seen him before, but we get plenty of strangers passing through, just like any gas station. He got $40 worth of diesel fuel, paid with a $100 bill, and went on his way. I sat back and sighed. The only thing more boring than doing this job is watching someone else do it. My boss's offer was enough to keep me watching though, so I left the tape on. Everything seemed pretty normal. I had a feeling that if Jeremy was stealing motor oil, he knew we were suspicious of him by now. I didn't expect him to be dumb enough to let us catch him on camera. Things stayed boring and routine until about 5 o'clock. At 5:03, Mrs. Templeton came back in. She must have forgotten something. But she didn't. She bought the same pack of cigarettes as before and the same newspaper. She paid with another 20. That's odd, I thought. But then again, she is a little absent-minded. I thought Jeremy should have told her she already got her smokes, but it's not against the rules to sell somebody the same thing twice. And that's when Ron came in again. He bought another tank of gas for his motorcycle again. I later checked the outdoor camera because I thought maybe he had another car he wanted to fill up. And the same pack of beef jerky. He paid with his credit card again. No big deal. I figured this was just a weird coincidence. Mrs. Templeton is forgetful and Ron probably owns more than one Harley. And that's when the guy in the cowboy hat came back in. I felt a chill run down my spine. Don't get diesel. Don't get diesel. I found myself whispering to my empty living room. But he did. He got $40 worth of diesel fuel and paid with another $100 bill. Every move he made was identical to his first visit. Right down to the way he scratched his nose before he walked out. Either this guy is rich, owns a lot of trucks, and just moved into town, or something really bizarre was happening. I kept watching. Every customer for the next hour was the same as before. Every single one. I was seriously freaked out, and then at 6:03, Mrs. Templeton walked back in. She bought her cigarettes and newspaper again and paid with a 20 again. I thought I was going to lose it. I only watched another half hour before I started fast forwarding through the rest. It was all the same. Every customer would come in at the exact same times, exactly 1 hour apart. Now I know what you're thinking. That sneaky motherfucker Jeremy had messed with the tapes. He had run a loop of his first hour of business over and over, but that wasn't the case. There are windows around the cash register area that the camera covers, and I watched the sunlight fade as time ran on. Jeremy's routine didn't loop over. He swept, mopped, restocked, and did all his duties exactly how you would expect. The same customers kept coming in. I was panicking at this point. Something was seriously wrong with what I was seeing, and I had no explanation for it. I skipped ahead to when he locked up and walked out to his car. He hadn't stolen anything. But I kept watching, just to make sure. I fast-forwarded one last time to about midnight. At exactly 12:03, out of nowhere, Jeremy's face pops up on camera. I don't mean he moved his head into view. I mean that 1 second the store was empty, the next second his face was all I could see. He wasn't looking at the camera, he was looking at me. I was sure of it. I screamed and fumbled for the remote. By the time I grabbed it, he was gone just as soon as he had left. One frame he was there and the next he wasn't. My hands were shaking like crazy, but I popped in another tape. The other indoor camera shows the back area by the cash register, and I would be able to see how he got up to put his face in the camera like that. I skipped ahead to 12:03, but there was nothing. I would have been able to see him standing on a chair or something on this tape, but he wasn't there. I didn't see him enter the store at all after he left. It's like he wasn't really there. He doesn't know the security code and no alarms were triggered that night after he locked up. What I did see, however, was that at 12:03, the motor oil vanished off the shelf. All of it. Same as Jeremy's face. 1 second it was there and the next it wasn't. I turned that tape off and went to bed, but I didn't get a wink of sleep. My body is exhausted right now, but my mind is racing. That tape was undoubtedly the creepiest, most disturbing thing I've ever seen in my life. I work in a few hours. My boss asked me to bring the tapes back in and let him know what I found, but really, what the hell am I going to say? Jeremy works the night shift tonight directly after me, and the plan is for my boss to come in just before I leave and confront him with me, as I'm supposed to be the one who caught him stealing. I have no idea what I'm going to do. I suppose I'll have to show my boss the tapes, but I don't want to watch them with him. I never want to see something like that again. I can't get the image of Jeremy just smiling directly into the camera out of my mind. It was the creepiest look I've ever seen on another human being's face. Anyway, I'm gonna try again to get some last-minute sleep before I have to go in and deal with this. I'll let you guys know what happens. Update. 2:49 p.m. Updating from my phone, apologies in advance for errors. My boss just finished watching the last of the tapes, and I told him what to expect. But you can't really prepare someone for something like that. He's scared shitless. I still am too. And Jeremy is due to come in at 4. We've got a little over an hour to get our shit together, but neither one of us knows what to say to him. Is he just a fucked up guy who likes to steal motor oil and scare the shit out of people? Or is it something else? I don't know if this is crazy, but does anyone think he could have anything to do with the time loop? My boss said he never noticed anything like that in the other tapes, but the way he popped in this one made me think he knew I would be watching. It's like he wanted me to see what he could do. Like he was showing off or something. The way he smiled into the camera was like a little kid showing you a sandcastle they just built or something. I don't know. I probably sound crazy. I sure feel the part. I'm going to talk to my boss some more. We have to calm ourselves down and figure out how to handle this. I'll update again tonight. But I really have a bad feeling about how this is going to play out. Update 4:33 p.m. No sign of Jeremy. Tried calling him, but his phone has been disconnected. We're calling the police. Update 5:33 p.m. No sign of Jeremy. Tried calling him, but his phone has been disconnected. We're calling the police. Update 6:33 p.m. No sign of Jeremy. Tried calling him, but his phone has been disconnected. We're calling the police. Update 7:33 p.m. No sign of Jeremy. Tried calling him, but his phone has been disconnected. We're calling the police. Update 8:33 p.m. No sign of Jeremy. Tried calling him, but his phone has been disconnected. We're calling the police. Update 10:58 p.m. Holy shit, holy shit, holy shit, holy shit. I just got home and saw my previous updates. Things makes less sense now than ever. Here's what I can tell you. I went to work. Jeremy never showed up. My boss and I decided to call the police, as you're well aware. When I picked up the phone to call though, the sun went out. I shit you not, that's what I thought happened. Apparently, I blacked out for exactly 5 hours because when I looked at the clock, it was 9:33. I think I got stuck in Jeremy's time loop. And then I snapped out of it at the exact point I blacked out, if that makes sense. But that's when things got really weird. My boss was right next to me when I blacked out, ready to corroborate my story to the cops. When I came to, the phone was in my hand, but it was dead. Not even a dial tone. My boss was still right there, but he wasn't moving. He was just standing there, but frozen. I looked at the clock again, and it wasn't moving. The second hand was stuck on the 12. It was 9:33 exactly. The clock on the register wasn't moving either. My phone was frozen. There was even a customer at the register waiting for my boss to get him cigarettes. I'm betting that would have been his 5th pack of the day. I got the fuck out of there. Didn't lock up, didn't turn on the lights out, and sorry guys, I didn't grab the security tapes to upload on the internet. Believe me, that was the last thing on my mind. The gas station is on a major highway and cars were parked all along it, except they weren't parked, they were frozen. The people inside were sitting still as wax statues. I got in my car and prayed that it would start, and thankfully it did. About halfway home, time started up again. The static from the radio turned into music like it's supposed to be, And from what I could tell by listening to the host talk in between songs, no one noticed the time freeze or whatever it was. I was the only one. Well, I'm sure Jeremy noticed as well, and I still have no clue where he is or what he's doing. I'm hiding in my room and calling the police again in the morning. I don't know if I ever got through to them before, or if I did, whether they took me seriously. I'm scared for my life at this point. I'll update tomorrow, if I can. Final update, 10:33 a.m. I finally fell asleep last night around 4. I have no idea how I did it, but I guess exhaustion finally got the best of me. This morning, I woke up to my phone ringing. It was my boss. He'd been calling me since about 6. He woke up when time turned back on last night and immediately called the cops. They came by to see what was wrong, and he told them everything. The police around here are all small-time guys. They were more concerned with the missing motor oil than anything, but my boss figured he would take it as long as he had their attention. They decided to go looking for Jeremy. We keep all our employees' applications on files, and since Jeremy just started working here, his was easy to find. They checked the address on it and headed over to his house, and you're not gonna believe what they found. The address Jeremy listed on his application was an empty lot. Or at least, now it is. There used to be a house there, but it burned down in 1993. And being a small town, almost everyone remembers that fire. A family of 4 used to live there way back when. Rumor has it that they had an estranged son who they never really talked about, but I can't say for sure if that's true. What I can say is true is that after an insurance investigation, the fire was ruled an arson. The entire house was soaked in oil and torched with a Molotov cocktail. The entire family was sleeping when it happened, and none of them survived. They never caught the guy who did it. Rumor has it that when they tried to contact the estranged son, no one could find him. Anyway, my boss called and told me this, and I freaked out. And he asked me to come to the gas station, and I told him, like, what, are you crazy? But he assured me that the cops were there with him. And then he dropped another bomb. The FBI were also in town, and they were going to talk to me one way or another, so I might as well come in. It was about 7:15 and I wanted to go back to bed, but I figured I wouldn't be able to sleep much more anyway, so I went down. 4 men in suits greeted me and told me to have a seat. We went over everything 2 or 3 times until they got all the details down. I told them about Jeremy, the security tape, last night at work, everything. And finally, after I finished, one of the agents said, Christ, we've got another one on our hands. And they made me sign a bunch of papers saying I wouldn't tell anyone about what happened, so I can't say much more. I might be breaking the law just by posting this. So now I'm home. I'm not sure what to do with myself. The agent's words when I told him the story are going to haunt me for the rest of my life. Anyway, I've got to go. I have some errands to run today, and then I have to go into work to pick up some tapes. My boss and I think this new guy, Jeremy, he's a complete creep, is stealing motor oil, and I have to watch the security footage to see if I can catch him doing it. I have better things to do, but my boss is paying me overtime under the table. I'm trying to save up for vacation, so I could really use the money. It should be pretty simple. The oil always goes missing right after his shifts. I figure I'll just watch the tapes, catch him in the act, and that will be that. Surveillance is a growing fact of life these days, but I now believe we've expanded the scope of human sight to a dangerous levels. I'm not a master hacker by any means, but I was definitely able to Google a script to break into my neighbor's new smart home system. Believe me when I say that ignorance is bliss and that you can never go back once you know the truth. Look, I'm not some creep. The idea first started as a random thought when I heard my 50-something neighbor bragging to someone else on his porch about his new smart home system. He claimed the security system and all the devices in his house were wired to the same voice command box, and he sounded rather proud of it. He claimed it was perfect security. Of course, after overhearing a claim like that floating in through my open window, I made a single search and found a dozen hits for scripts that would bring you to the brand he described. I laughed to myself and then left it at that. But temptation has a funny way of lurking in the back of your mind. Every few days, the thought would randomly pop into my head. I had the power, so why not take a peek? It would be good for a laugh, if nothing else. It's not like he would have installed cameras in his bathrooms or anything. Nah. No. Maybe no, I shouldn't. But then spring break arrived, and while sitting at my computer, I happened to glance out the window and see the neighbor's daughter coming home from college. The temptation to use the script had already been percolating in me for weeks. The veins in my extremities constricted painfully as I realized I was actually going to do it. During my brief glimpse down into their yard, I'd seen what looked like a startlingly attractive girl. And I couldn't connect that image to the weird girl next door I'd last seen in high school. Look, it wasn't a creeper thing. I just wanted a better look to understand what I'd seen. I told myself I'd take one quick look and then be done with it. While loading up the script, I promised myself I'd delete it right after. Yeah, that was the right thing to do. No harm done, and if I got caught somehow, I could just claim it was a one-time accident. That sounded reasonable. A black window scrolled text down my screen rapidly for 6 seconds, and then I was in. Nerves thrilling, I watched breathlessly through a security cam feed in the living room as the girl came in. She greeted her brother and father and then headed upstairs. It was definitely the same girl I remembered. And she's definitely gotten absurdly pretty in the last year somehow. After settling into certainty, I closed the feed, deleted the script, and then spent a paranoid hour clearing my computer of any evidence of what I'd done. For maybe a week, I sat at home terrified that the police would break down my door and tase me at any moment. But that's the funny thing about temptation. When no consequences followed, the urge to look began eating away at me again. I had a few drinks one lovely night and then went for it before I could change my mind. The son was watching television in the living room. I couldn't see what he was watching from the angle of the camera in the living room, but he seemed zoned out. My neighbor himself was sitting in the kitchen working on his laptop. Again, couldn't see what he was doing from my angle, but he was certainly downing coffee as he worked. My pulse quickened as a hallway feed caught the daughter going from her room to the bathroom in just a towel to take a shower. Okay, borderline creepish, I told myself, but it's not like I could see in the bathrooms or the bedrooms, right? Just to confirm that I couldn't, I tried the various devices around the house that the neighbor had connected to his system. Most were named with random numbers and letters, but I did find that household devices had many more sensors than we gave them credit for. A microwave in the kitchen had some sort of crude light sensor, and the system sent me its data as an incredibly blurry video feed. A big blob of darkness moved in place in front of a bright rectangle of light, and I realized I was looking at my neighbor on his laptop from a different angle. In fact, many devices in the house had crude light sensors or audio pickups, and I could hear the shower running upstairs while listening to the son's show on another. I mean, this was all proceeding as one might expect, and I might have gone down to a very dark path if I hadn't stumbled upon the unthinkable. One of the devices with a very long and very random name showed me a blurry feed somewhere unrecognizable. I switched back and forth, comparing the patterns of light from the cameras, but this device seemed to be looking out on somewhere altogether different. Was it the basement? It was darker than the others, but not too dark to obscure strange gray blurs moving on black. I kept switching until I found a security camera near a basement window. It was the only one down there, but it showed enough that I could compare blurs. It was less that the objects were moving and more that the fuzzy sensors made the objects appear to move simply because it was so bad. But I pinpointed a poster, a chair, and a mirror before coming to an impasse with the final blur. This one I could only see on the sensor. There was nothing on the video feed. Peering closer and closer, I tried to make sense of the blob of gray and white pixels as it moved around the basement. There and there, recognizable landmarks among the junk, but no sign of it in the high-res camera. What was I seeing? Was the sensor just defective? What device was it even part of? I managed to narrow it down to a forgotten digital clock that must have been running on batteries, but nothing about this made sense. I looked up a script to sharpen video data and I let everything run all night. In the morning, I pulled myself up, got a coffee, and sat down at my computer, and then froze. Repeatedly, I played the confusing horror the script had produced. The blur of gray and shadows had become coherent, but not in any natural way. Instead, it appeared that I was looking at an androgynous, gray humanoid form with a pillowcase over her head. Since this was just a graphical best guess, her glitchy movement brought out severe unease and disgust in me as I watched her jerkily walk around the basement. She appeared to be able to navigate despite the pillowcase covering her face. She even made it up a few steps towards the basement door before her random movements took her back down. What the hell was I seeing? For 2 days, I watched that thing stumble around my neighbor's basement before she finally went all the way up the stairs. It was 4 in the morning and all 3 of them were asleep, and this time she seemed to move with purpose. She was still not visible on any high-resolution camera, but I tracked her from sensor to sensor by her twitching blur. For so long watching her unfocused form, I was beginning to get a sense of where her legs and arms were by the movement and patterns of the gray. Each of her limbs moved as if it's on different conflicting joints. When she walked, it was as if her ankles, knees, and thighs each wanted to go opposite directions, and the conflict was only resolved by odd rotations and strange body angles. Gripped by terror, I watched her slowly ratchet her way through the kitchen and toward the second set of stairs. There was no doubt in my mind that she was heading for the bedrooms. My knuckles went white as I gripped the edge of my table. Finally, as she clambered up and out of sight of the sensors, I panicked. She still wasn't visible on the hallway camera, but I knew I had to do something. But what? If I called the house, they would have my phone number and they would start asking questions as to why I'd call at 4 in the morning. There was no way I could pretend it was random. The only reason I even had my neighbor's cell phone number was that I'd heard him say it out loud the week before one of my feeds. What could I do? Desperate to act, or at least to see what was happening, I left my computer and crept to a window in another room. From here, I could see into my neighbor's daughter's window, and my entire body ran with prickly terror as I spied a strange, gray anti-glow in her room. The sharpening script had not been wrong. It had merely been inadequate. My eyes still interpreted the inexplicable entity and as an androgynous humanoid with a pillowcase over its head. But it moved through the space of the ghost room like a depressed carving etched into reality itself. I could feel why it didn't show up on cameras. It was something otherworldly, something not entirely there, or something visible only as an artifact of organic human perception. This was a creature outside the realm of human knowledge and observation, and I guess that it was making its move now only because it believed itself to be unseen. It jerked and twitched forward to lean over the neighbor's daughter as she slept. Quickly and quietly, I slid open my window, removed the screen, and threw a quarter at the glass panes opposite. I ducked down immediately and clutched the floor in abject terror. The rap noise had been excruciatingly loud. Had the entity snapped its pillowcase-covered head toward the sound? Had it seen me? I had no way of knowing. Or did I? Crawling back to my room, I checked the feeds. Apparently, completely unperturbed by my noise, the entity had become ratcheting her way back down the stairs. It was not fleeing to the basement. I watched as it approached the small table by the front door and began going through the mail stacked there. It carefully picked out one envelope and crumpled it into oblivion in a blurry gray hand. Then it moved to the kitchen, where it touched the keyboard on my neighbor's laptop repeatedly for nearly a minute. What was it doing? It returned to the basement to move in lurking circles, and I sat and stared at it half awake until a shout from both my computer and my open window jolted me full awareness. It had been my neighbor in his kitchen. He'd yelled loud enough for me to hear it for real. Stalking back and forth while talking on the phone, he was insisting he hadn't sent any compromising emails. He had been fired from his job. In the front hall, his son was busy looking through the pile of mail. He asked his sister and father repeatedly if any college acceptance letters had come in, but his father was too busy arguing on the phone and his sister hadn't seen any. But I had. What type of entity were we dealing with here? It hadn't physically harmed anyone, but it was still lurking in their home every hour and every day, and it had made invisible moves against them by sabotaging my neighbor's job and his son's college career. At long last, my neighbor seemed to convince the other end that his account has been hacked, but he was somber and concerned about how it would reflect on him at work. The son continued on with his day, oblivious to the fact that his acceptance letter had come in and been destroyed. It was then that I began to think about the timeline of what had happened. I'd resisted the urge to spy on my neighbor's family for weeks, indeed, beyond that, he'd lived there for years. If the entity had been in his basement this entire time, then perhaps they were not physically at risk. There'd been plenty of opportunities to hurt them directly. No, this was something else. This was a specter of misfortune, a curse, an information parasite. But my neighbor had not been particularly unlucky as far as I knew, not until he'd gotten the surveillance system. A bunch of little complaints I'd heard him make suddenly began to add up. Things had been inexplicably going wrong for everyone in his family recently. Alarm clocks had been failing to go off at the proper time. Emails and texts had been a bit weird, and each of the 3 members of his household had a general growing frustration with life. It was undermining them. It was literally lurking in the basement, lurking out of sight and sabotaging them, and they had no idea. But where did it come from? Almost all of the devices and camera had been there before. The only difference was that they had been integrated. Did observation have an effect on the physical universe? Look, I'm no quantum physics expert, but I knew that observation was a crucial part of existence. Did overlapping connected layers of observation somehow enable this entity to slide into our world? When you put all the pieces together, did the whole add up to more than the sum of the parts? I began thinking up of a plan of action that involves sneaking over there and turning off all of their devices in the hopes of banishing the entity in their basement, but as I did so, I looked down and to the left at my cell phone. It sat quietly glowing on the table, for I had moved my hand above it and activated its motion sensors. Then I looked up and noticed the webcam above my monitor that I always kept pointed at myself. Then I looked to my right at my television, itself containing a sensor, and a gaming console beside it that also had sensors to detect my motions. Microphones, cameras, everywhere. I'd applied for so many internships last summer and got a none. I'd missed dates and lost budding relationships because of texting troubles. Everything had felt hard and difficult lately. That's why I was sitting alone on my computer most nights. I sat without breathing for the next 20 seconds. There would be no plan. There would be no action taken. My neighbors, they would have to fend for themselves. I let out my breath, put my hands back on my mouse and keyboard, and loaded up a computer game. It would look like I'd given up to anyone watching. A man went to a hotel and walked up to the front desk to check in. The woman at the desk gave him his key and told him that on the way to his room, there was a door with no number that was locked, and no one was allowed in there. Especially, no one should look inside the room under any circumstances. So he followed the instructions of the woman at the front desk, going straight to his room and going to bed. The next night, his curiosity would not leave him alone about the room with no number on the door. He walked down to the hall, to the door, and tried the handle. Sure enough, it was locked. He bent down and looked through the wide keyhole. Cold air passed through it, chilling his eye. What he saw was a hotel bedroom like his, and in the corner was a woman whose skin was completely white. She was leaning her head against the wall, facing away from the door. He stared in confusion for a while. He almost knocked on the door out of curiosity, but decided not to. This disinclination saved his life. He crept away from the door and walked back to his room. The next day, he returned to the door and looked through the wide keyhole. This time, all he saw was redness. He couldn't make anything out besides a distinct red color, unmoving. Perhaps the inhabitants of the room knew he was spying the night before and had blocked the keyhole with something red. At this point, he decided to consult the woman at the front desk for more information. She sighed and said, "Did you look through the keyhole?" The man told her that he had, and she said, "Well, I might as well tell you the story. A long time ago, a man murdered his wife in that room, and her ghost haunts it. But these people were not ordinary. They were white all over, except for their eyes, which were red." She's not here. If you're wondering. To be honest, I thought it was obvious. But what can I say? Humans are, well, quite the, how should I put it into words? The stupid ones. Now Hyona would try to kill me for calling you guys stupid. At least she would say something like, you can't call them stupid, use some other words, like call them monkeys, call them less intelligent. But what other words can I use to describe the entity that humanity is, if not stupid? What were you expecting? What were you expecting? What did you expect, that your lovely little panther doctor is, what, filled with sunshines and comfort? She'll hug you and tell you that life is gonna be okay, buddy, that you're going to make it. She's not. She's not what you... She's not what you think she is. We're not what you think we are. And no matter how hard she tries to hide it, piece by piece and layer by layer, everything will be revealed. Even if it takes years or centuries, even if it takes another bloodbath, she has to remember. She has to remember. She has to remember. She has to remember. And blessed be the people and their sacrifices. You are here, said the man in the black suit, because you are dentists. The man in the black suit stood in a bright room before 10 men, 10 dentists, in a semicircle. They didn't look at one another. They focused on the man in the black suit. Of all medical professions, continued the man. Dentists have the highest rate of suicide. The man didn't move. They kept their eyes locked on the man talking to them. I have invited you here to talk about. The man in the black suit paused. He looked down at his feet and shuffled them a bit. Then he looked up. I brought you here to talk about that. The dream. A few of the men fidgeted. One uncrossed his legs. They looked at one another. They looked sharply, squinty-eyed, questioningly at the man in the black suit. The man in the black suit folded his arms and looked at each of them. He waited. Finally, one of the dentists spoke. You a dentist? No, said the man in the black suit. Then why should we talk to you? It won't do any good. You wouldn't understand, said another dentist, sitting up in his chair. You wouldn't understand unless you're a dentist, said another. You can't understand it, corrected another dentist. And even if you could understand our dream, said another, you wouldn't really understand it. Not really. The man in the black suit listened to them. He nodded as they spoke. The dentists looked at him with scrutiny. The man shuffled a bit and cleared his throat. Like I said, I brought you here to talk about the dream. He reached into his black suit and pulled out a bundle of envelopes. He opened one and showed it to the dentists in their seat. Each of these envelopes contains $5,000 worth of cash. You each get an envelope if you agree to tell me about the dream. Why do you care? Asked the dentist. Is that your money? You a pharmacist? You gonna give us a pill? Some of the dentists snickered. What's in it for you? Why should we, regardless of my reasons? Interrupted the man in the black suit. I have a lot of money for each one of you if you will tell me the dream. The dentists sat in silence. Then they spoke and said more or less the same thing. You wouldn't understand. You couldn't understand. No, you couldn't understand. The room fell silent again. The man stayed standing in front of the dentists as they sat, arms folded in front of him. Finally, one of them spoke. Heck, he said, getting to his feet. I'll tell him. It won't matter, said another dentist. He won't get it. Nobody does, unless you're a dentist, and he's already told us he's not. So what do we have to lose? Replied the other one. I'll tell him the dream. We'll get our cash and we'll be on our way. Except for the few heads that nodded in agreement, the room stayed still. So, said the willing one, here's the dream. Excuse me, interrupted the man in the black suit, putting up his hand. Before you begin, I ask that this be recorded. The man in the black suit clapped his hands twice, loudly. A door opened from the back corner of the room and an old woman entered. pushing some sort of typewriter on a chair with squeaky wheels. "This is Mrs. Crumb," smiled the man as the woman approached. "She is a record keeper," he said. "And Dad," pointing at the machine on the chair, "is a stenograph. Miss Crumb will take notes." The old woman slowly made her way to the front of the semicircle. The man in black suit took the stenograph off the chair, and Miss Crumb sat down. He placed the stenograph with its large blocky keys on her lap. She sifted a few times and got comfortable. Then she looked up at the man in the black suit expectantly. "Okay," smiled the man in the black suit. "If you are all in agreement, let's begin." The willing dentist stood up. He cleared his throat. "The dream has to do with the amount of holes in a person's head," he began. One of the dentists sighed loudly as if he'd heard the story 1,000 times. "He's not going to understand," he retorted. "Let him try," said another. The first dentist continued. "Every person has 7 holes in their head. 2 ear holes," he said. 2 eye holes. 2 nostrils. And a mouth," he said. 7. Miss Crumb started typing quietly away on her stenograph. "It's a horrible dream, really. The dream deals with a type of weaving that goes in and out of these different holes. And it's always the same." The dentist lifted his hand and put his thumb and forefinger together as if he were pinching something. "I am standing over a patient with a needle and a piece of thread. I have an overwhelming need to... The man squinted up his face like he didn't want to say the next part. But he did. "I have an overwhelming urge to weave that needle and that thread through those 7 holes. I put the end of it in an ear, and it must come out of another hole, say, the mouth. Then it must go into another hole, and out another, and in another, and out another, until the last one. Am I right so far, fellas?" "Right," said one dentist. "You got it," said another. "But," the man continued, "because there are 7 holes in the head, 2 ears, 2 eyes, 2 nostrils, 1 mouth, the needle and thread always ends up on the inside, in the head. It's in and out, in and out, in and out, and in. And that's a problem," asked the man in the suit. "See," someone said. "He doesn't get it." "It is a huge problem," continued the dentist. "There is something in the dream, an aura, an entity, a compulsion. Call it what you want, that mandates what goes in must come out. So there I am, bent over some man, sewing a thread through him like he's a stuffed turkey." "It's hard to capture in words," one of the other dentists interrupted. "But the dream is very clear. There is a very real sense of some sort of urgency. I take that needle and that thread, and I must go in through one of the holes in the head and out through another until they're all used and every time that dang needle ends up on the inside. So I pull it out, and the patient is screaming. And I start again, and I'm up to my elbows in blood, and you can imagine. It's horrific. It's absolutely horrible, said another. It's exhausting, said another. Completely exhausting. And of course, it makes perfect sense when we're awake, said another. That the needle and thread will always end up on the inside of the skull, but we do it over and over and over because it's a dream. Going in and out, in and out, in and out, and in. The patient screams, and you gotta pull the needle and thread out, and you're up to your elbows in screaming and blood. And because it's a dream, you start again, and again, and again. What goes in must come out, whispered one of the dentists. In and out, in and out, in and out, and in. The man in the black suit listened intently, nodding. Miss Crumb sat silently, recording every word. Then, said another dentist, we wake up after a full night of needling and threading and go to work, and there is a patient in the chair, and the only thing on our minds is that dream, and, well, after a while, it is pretty dang hard to determine what is a dream and what isn't. It's why we drill so hard sometimes, said another. We think, if I can drill another hole in that tooth, in that head, then maybe, just maybe, I can dream of a patient with another hole in the head. And maybe the needle will come out. And maybe the dream will stop, said another. And it's most definitely why some of us put a gun in our own mouths and pull the trigger. It's a bad thing to say, but that hole in our own head is the only sure way to end the dream. The man in the black suit listened, and the room fell quiet. Then we can sleep, said one. Yes, sleep. Well, that's the story, said one of the dentists. He looked at the man in the black suit. We just want to sleep. At this point, the man in the black suit got up from his chair and approached Miss Crumb, who had been recording every word on the stenograph. He stood directly behind her, so the two of them faced the semicircle of dentists. He placed his hands on her shoulders. She stopped typing. I would like all of you to come forward and stand around Miss Crumb, said the man in the black suit. Go ahead, come forward. The dentists got up. They approached Miss Crumb and the man in the black suit. He looked down onto the top of her head and said, Miss Crumb, I want you to show these people your unique characteristics. Miss Crumb slowly lifted her chin and tilted her head back until she locked eyes with the man standing above her. He gently placed his hands around the bottom of her chin and snugly cradled the top of her head with his forearms into his stomach. The man in the black suit looked up at one of the dentists. Come here. Come see. A dentist stepped closer and stared down at the old stenographer's face. He gasped. What is that? He moved even closer until he was just a foot or so from Miss Crumb's face. He squinted and fumbled with his words. How? Why? How is it done? That's impossible. The man in the black suit looked up at the rest of the dentists. Look closely, all of you. Miss Crumb remained in the man's grip, staring up at the ceiling. As they came forward, she resumed her typing, recording the dentists as they came one by one until they had witnessed for themselves the miracle of Miss Crumb. She has no mouth. It's just a line. It's just a fake line. She has 6 holes in her head. No mouth. No mouth, they cheered. In and out, in and out, in and out. And that means... Another finishes his sentence. What goes in must come out. In and out, in and out, in and out. The dentists cheered. They smiled wide-eyed and patted each other on the back and looked at the man in the black suit. The man in the black suit gently released Miss Crumb from his grip, and she dutifully continued to record each statement, each observation as the dentist walked around the chair, counting the holes in her ears, her eyes, her nostrils. Some counted the holes with their fingers. Others pinched their own imaginary needles, plunging and pulling imaginary threads into the air as they walked around her. Some became emotional. She doesn't have an extra hole, said one. She has one fewer. It makes sense. The man in the black suit cleared his throat. They all looked up at him. She was created for you, so you could sleep. Thank you, they cried to the man in the suit. They each, in turn, bent down next to Miss Crumb. Thank you, Miss Crumb. Thank you for existing. Thank you for helping us sleep. I am ready to hand out some envelopes, said the man in the black suit, reaching into his suit coat, retrieving the bundles. But first, he said, pulling a needle and a long piece of black thread from his coat pocket. Let's make sure that it works.